Welcome to Manifest This, Believer versus Skeptic. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Sharon Giroux, and I am joined by my co-host and believer, Jennifer Neal. Hey, Jen, how are you today?
Great. How are you? How was your week?
It's been a lot of fun, lots of playing around, as you know, but it's all been good. Tell me how yours has been.
Just great. We've come off a very big cross USA trip in an RV. We're back home and lots of droppings of things that we've been talking about. So why don't we
That's
just kick it
great.
off?
Tell me more. I can't wait to hear it.
Okay, so I just want to recap where we left off last week. We talked about the homework, if you want to call it homework, was to focus in on a feeling rather than a specific thing. So a feeling and the kind of feeling that you want to have a lot more of. Okay. So I'm going to
Right.
give you a couple of examples of things that happened to me during our 50-day journey across the States in this 29-foot camper trailer. So I just kept coming across what I was calling angels on this trip. And a couple of weeks after we talked about our free coffee, I had not seen a free coffee, but I'd had other things we talked about in the last two episodes. But funnily enough, the next day, I went into this trailer park office because we hadn't bought coffee the night before. And so I went in to see if I could buy some in the camp store because quite often they'll have basics for sale. So I walk into the store and there was an older gentleman behind the desk. And I said to him, "Do you sell coffee in here?" And he said, "No, I'm afraid we don't." And I said, "Okay, thank you very much." And I was about to leave the store. And he said, "What kind of coffee maker do you have?" And I said, "We've got a Keurig." And he said, "Come with me." And he took me into the back staff office and he pulled out a basket of Keurig pods and he said, "Take as many as you like." And so I actually took a picture of this. So someday when we figure out how to post pictures, I actually took a picture of this. This guy gave me free coffee pods. So, some of you might be saying, "Big deal, Jennifer, big deal." The big deal is I just got a free coffee. In fact, I got 6 of them because he gave me 6 pods. And the feeling that came across my entire body and my face when that happened was delight. This guy just gave me my free coffee. There it is. That's the focusing on the feeling I'm talking about. It's that feel good. Holy smokes, this stuff works. That's the feeling. And if you can keep that feeling, that's what will keep bringing more and more of these great delights into your life.
Okay, so here's the skeptic. As much as I love this little glimmer you're explaining, isn't it possible that it's just coincidence?
Sure, it is. But don't you want more of those coincidences? And, arguably, the more advanced you get in this work, there are no coincidences in life. There's none. It's all a part of the plan. But if you're not looking for them, if you're not expectant of them, if you're not believing that they will come, they won't, or you'll miss them.
Right. So it's being aware and observant, is what you're saying.
For sure. I'm going to give you another example from this trip.
Okay,
So
great.
we're in Sedona, gorgeous state. If you haven't been there, hightail it over there. Anyway,
Well, and I notice, if I may, that you did go and see the Frank Lloyd Wright Church of the Redeemer, which is probably one of my all-time favorite buildings on the planet.
yeah, it's pretty spectacular. So I will direct people to those Instagram shots if they want to see them at some point. But anyway, we're in Sedona and I had done a little research ahead of time. And apparently the place to have Mexican is a restaurant called El Latte. And so because we had at this point in our trip decided to just trust in the universe and be guided, we had no reservations. And quite frankly, we didn't even know about this restaurant until about 6 hours before we arrived. So we go to the restaurant and of course there's not a table to be had. And the first reservation was going to be at 8:30 at the bar that we could get in. And that was almost 3 hours from the time we were at now. And the town was closing down. So there wasn't a whole lot we could do to, pass time waiting for this reservation. So we said, "Thanks very much. I think we'll pass." And then we walked out the door and I said to Dar, we should probably go in and grab that reservation because if it's all it's supposed to be, it's probably worth waiting. No sooner had I gone back in, and the waitress or the hostess said to me, "Where have you been? I tried to follow you out. We just had a table for two open up. It's our best seat in the house." And I looked at Dar and I said, "Why did we ever not think this would happen? Why do we ever go to that place where we think the end of the road is the end of the road just because someone has told you it's the end of the road?" We ended up at the time we wanted, at the best seat in the house in front of a fireplace. We couldn't have planned it any better.
Right.
That feeling of, holy smokes, it just happened again. And it kept happening and happening and happening during that entire journey. And it's just so fun.
Yeah. I guess it's that in some respects is the feeling that you're lucky, right?
In
So,
fact, so much of my life, I keep saying, I'm so lucky. We're so lucky. Like free boats. Like we'll talk about it over the journey of this podcast, but I've been so lucky in life. But I think it's because I think I'm lucky.
okay. So it's not confirmation bias then.
No, it is me declaring to the universe that I'm lucky. Great things keep happening to me. And so, guess what happens? Great things just keep happening to me. I'm
Okay.
not saying bad things don't happen. The key is I don't focus on them, or I don't focus on them for very long because I don't want more of that.
And that comes back to some of the prior discussions we have about the energy that we're putting out, whether it's negative or positive energy.
Yeah. And again, look at your life. What do you see? Do you like it? Great. If you don't like it, you are responsible for everything in your life that you do like and that you don't like. And you are the creator. You can change it like that.
So, okay, let me ask you this. We hear a lot about, it sort of being mystical or supernatural. Is that different from what you're saying because you're your own creator?
No, not at all. I think what I am saying is this is supernatural. And a lot of people aren't ready for this discussion yet. But what we're talking about, we can't see in the natural world. We're talking about a supernatural power or force that is working on your behalf all the time, regardless of what you're asking for. And again, that can be tricky, but there is a supernatural force waiting for you to act on it. I've talked about this before. It's like electricity in the wall. It is there whether you plug something into it or not. And that electricity can be used to fire up your phone, or it can be used to do a lot of damage. Electrocution happens. So
So
the
you
power, yeah, go ahead.
So you said supernatural is basically something that you can't see or what have you, like gravity. So how is supernatural different from something like gravity? Is it only because we've put some scientific method against gravity that makes it more tangible or believable where we can't necessarily put it against supernatural?
It's exactly the same thing. Gravity and the power of manifestation or law of attraction, lots of other things we'll talk about over the course of this podcast. It's exactly the same thing. They are laws. They have to happen. They're laws from the universe. The problem is you see gravity happen all the time. If I drop a ball from here to the floor, it's going to fall. It's not going to stay in the air. We know it's going to fall. So because you can see it, you believe it. The challenge where we're going with the law of attraction and manifestation is because you can't see the orchestrations that are happening behind the scenes, you tend not to believe it. But that doesn't mean it's not there.
Got it.
What about
Huh.
you? What happened to you last week? Could you focus on feeling?
So really where my focus was, as you well know, is health related right now. Just trying to get better. So really what I was focusing on was feeling good. And what I will say is this week on a Monday, I went back onto the pickleball court. I went with friends, people who support me and who I care about, who all have an injury themselves right now in some way, shape, or form. And we just agreed that we're just going to hit light and easy and no running. Like I wasn't going to run. And it was my dominant hand, my right hand, my right arm that I've damaged. So I started just playing with my left. And I'm a little bit ambidextrous and have played with both hands before. But it was interesting that it offered me a way. And I was goofing around with this last year before this accident happened, having read some studies about how important it is to activate both sides of your brain. So when I brush my teeth, for example, I would do it with my left hand, standing on my left foot, trying to stay balanced, just doing those little brain things that they suggest you do. And then on the pickleball court, I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to start playing with my left hand, and then I'll take a little break and play with my right. And I had a good friend who's a physiotherapist say, "You got 5 minutes, I'm timing you," so that I don't overdo it, which tends to be my modus operandi. And, I played with the right for 5 minutes and then went back with the left. And what was interesting to see was the second time I went to play with my right hand, I was about a minute in and I'm like, nope, this hurts. I'm not going to do it. I went back to my left. But what astonished me was how much more proficient I was becoming with my left hand. And while my arm isn't 100% yet, one starts to wonder whether or not the work that I've been doing with building up the other side of my body and working with my left hand is also helping my brain. So, I have the intention that it's my arm, but I wonder if it's more holistic than that.
I wonder.
So you had a great story that you were telling me the other day about a restaurant and boots. Do you want to share that?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah.
So another angel guided us to another, mainstay restaurant in Oklahoma City called the Cattleman Ranch. And, it totes to have the best steaks in the region. So off we go to this restaurant, and it is like, it's been ridden hard. Let's just put it that way. Like a lot of ranchers have come in and out of that restaurant over the past, I don't know, 50 years. Anyway, we're sitting in a booth where we've ordered our steak, and Dar, who, by the way, if anyone is just new, he's my partner. Darwin looks over and he's kind of eyeing this guy's cowboy boots that he's wearing. So suffice it to say, he gets up, he walks over to this gentleman who's wearing like a 10-gallon cowboy hat and starts up a conversation with him and inquiring about where he got these boots. So they start this little chit chat. Anyway, next thing you know, he's come back to the table 15 minutes later. This cowboy's now sitting in our booth. And we've now got a brand new best friend. And to make a long story short, the evening was a wonderful evening of exchange of stories and a new friendship. When we got up to leave, the cowboy came back over to our table and he said, "I just want you to know, I've just paid for your dinner. And I've ordered you 2 pieces of coconut cream pie because it's the best dessert this restaurant has. And I want your numbers. I want to stay in touch with you. In fact, we'd love to travel with you in the future." So not only did we meet a friend, we got our entire dinner paid. And let's just say we weren't cheaping out because we thought we were going to pay for our own dinner. He paid for our dinner. He added dessert. He then accompanied us the next day to a cowboy boot store so that Darwin could get a similar pair of boots, and he negotiated 40% off for him. Like, this is just examples of how much the universe wants to provide for us and give to us. These are also examples of, we talked about this a few episodes ago, money. Just because you don't see money fall in piles on your desk doesn't mean you're not manifesting money. We didn't have to pay for, arguably an over almost $200 dinner. He got 40% off the boots. Like, if you start adding up the savings of just that 24 hours alone, it's significant. It's hundreds of dollars. And it all started with a simple conversation, talking to someone else that we didn't know, a stranger.
Right. So I came across a really interesting term this past week while I was researching and looking at different things called apophenia, which is the tendency to perceive a connection or a meaningful pattern between unrelated or random things. What makes these manifestation stories different from the way people tend to make connections or narratives in hindsight to explain an outcome?
I mean, that's a great question. I think part of it is that, I don't know, is it normal to have coffees paid for and then next day a dinner picked up and then the next day somebody walking you into a store where you end up walking away with massive discounts? Is it normal? It's normal for me. Does it happen to you all the time, listeners? Do you see these things happening in your life? So I believe in that. What did you say that word was again?
Apophenia.
Apophenia. Like, I wholeheartedly believe in making connections between things and going, there it is again. There is validation of what I want to see, and I want to see more of it. Thank you very much.
So the difference, I guess, with apophenia is that it's a meaningful pattern between unrelated or random things. And what I hear you saying is it's not so unrelated or
Yeah,
random, that there are connections because of where you're putting your mindset.
for sure. And I mean, I guess the larger picture of all of this is the universe wants to take you where you want to go. Nothing more. It wants to take you where you want to go. And so what it's doing is putting people into your path that it thinks will benefit you in the things you've asked for. Right? So
Right.
these aren't so unrelated and random. I've used the example of a GPS in the past. I'll use it again. When you put that destination into your GPS, the GPS knows exactly how to get you there the fastest way possible. And if you take a wrong turn, it will say return to the route, return to the route. It knows how to get you there. If you go way off the path, it's like return to the route, return to the route. Like, unless you change your destination or what you want in life, the universe is your GPS. It knows how to get you there. So, what looks like random incidents are actually part of this larger plan to get you where you said you wanted to go.
So, okay. So, in some respects, I mean, we're hearing a lot of positive stories. Are we being selective where we're only hearing about the successes?
Well, yeah. I tell you stories of people that I watch in life getting the opposite of what I'm getting. Okay. So I can see people in my life that are, you know, it's a country song. Their dog died, their girlfriend left, their truck broke down, like, and on their basement flooded, and on and on and on, and they are really wanting to tell you about it. And listen, I'm not saying I'm a savior. I used to be a lot more like that myself. Like, complaining is really consoling to some people. The problem with it is the more you complain, the more you will attract the things that you are complaining about. And so you might say to me, Jennifer, does that mean my basement's going to flood twice? No, but something else that is not pleasurable will come into your life. You
So,
lose your job, you lose your dog, you lose your boyfriend, your husband walks out, your children are, it's constant. You keep looking for the bad, you're going to see it.
I'm going to throw this out there just as a discussion point, and that is there's often that reeling back to the past and going through the hurts and the pains, et cetera, et cetera. To what extent does doing that cause some of the negative issues, or is it necessary in order to see the patterns to make a change?
Yes, and yes. I
Tell
mean,
me
listen,
more.
I think that both are possible and definitely sometimes necessary depending on who you are as a person, right? So I'll take myself as an example. I'm going through a period in my life right now where I'm looking back into my family patterns, and I'm looking back into the family programming that I've had and how it has affected me. And I'll give you an example. As recently as last night, we get home from this trip. We've been on a camping trip. We've also emptied out the storage unit in Florida. There is crap everywhere the eye can see when we get home, right? Not an inch of floor is available. Everything is out. We've got people for coming dinner the next night and somebody else coming for dinner the following night. Some might say we're crazy. We probably are, but nevertheless, we got a mess to clean up. Where do I go? In my head, I start playing the victim. Poor me. No one's going to help me. No one's helped me in the past. How am I going to get this done by myself? It's way too much for one person. How am I going to do it? Poor me, poor me, poor me. And finally, Darwin said to me, why are you sighing over there? I didn't even know I was sighing, but I was, because my angst was coming out physically. And I I didn't say anything. I went out, I got some air, I got some time by myself, and I actually was able to come to the awareness that that was a family pattern that I had been very born and raised into, playing the victim, and that I could make a different choice. And the story I was telling myself, like this is a big phrase these days, what story are you telling yourself? The story I was telling myself was, for you, you're a victim, no one's going to help you, here you are again, right? That wasn't the case. I knew if I just sat down with him and said, these are the things that I see that need to be done. Will you help me put a plan together so we can tackle them together? And guess what? We did, and we did, and it's done. And it was such a glorious, beautiful epiphany that the story I was telling myself was not the actual reality of what was happening or could happen. So, to answer your point, yeah, like if you need to go back and realize where some of your programming comes from, do that. But don't stay there for very long because there's a new story to write. You know, we're writing the journey as we go along. This is how we become the creator. I immediately turned it around. Well, not immediately, a couple hours later. I'm actually able now to say, I was taught that as a kid. I brought that into my adult life. I don't want to be that anymore. Change it.
So, as I think about this and the common themes that we've been hitting on, to successfully make these changes, part of what I'm hearing is a little bit of detachment in the situation, analyzing where you are and having an understanding that sometimes it's not, even though you think it's about you, it's not about you. There's a way to look at it. Having some clear intention, so an idea of where you wanted to go, even though you weren't exactly sure how you were going to do it right away.
Yep.
Then having some alignment, some action. In this particular case, sitting down with your partner and having a conversation. And then the unexpected paths. So it coming to you in a way that you didn't necessarily expect, nor, I think, to be honest, hadn't lived previously. So you didn't expect that this would be a different outcome.
Totally. Like, I'm so proud of myself. I just say that. I'm proud of myself for recognizing the pattern I had that wasn't serving me in the creation I wanted. So, back to what we're talking about here is living a life that you're absolutely blown away by. We are creating all of the suffering, all of the crappiness. We're creating it. And we have an opportunity to change it, which requires action. Yes, to your point, it requires action. But the first key is awareness. And so many of us are walking around unaware, me being one of them. I wasn't aware till yesterday. I'm 56 years old.
Right.
But it was the awareness. And I didn't feel bad about myself. I went, oh my gosh, that's it. I'm playing a victim and I don't need to.
Do you think there's any awareness once you sort of come to understanding the patterns? The eventual breaking free of it is like, how did that old pattern serve you? What were you getting out of that old pattern that had you continue to do it? Because honestly, as humans, we tend not to change unless we're extraordinarily uncomfortable. And
For sure.
sometimes, even when we're uncomfortable, we go back to what we know because that discomfort is still something we know we can handle as opposed to something a bit unknown in that discomfort.
Well, not only that, but if you take it one step further, and we've talked about this a little bit before, is that the subconscious is driving the show. So if you're subconscious, you're not even a subconscious means you're not aware. Consciousness is awareness, subconscious is unaware, right? If you're not even aware of the program the subconscious is running on, you won't get it. So it really does take an idea of knowing what isn't serving you and looking at it and going, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be this anymore. Why is it? Where did it come from? How can I change it? I have the power. I have the power.
So let me ask you this. I think as women of a certain age, we sort of come to moments in our lives, and this is not a new topic. It's being talked about in the media. Some of it relates to change of life, midlife, kids leaving, all kinds of things, where there seems to be this tipping point. And I'm going to speak about women specifically because I am female, where we're just done. We're done. And I'm wondering if some of that self realization that starts to happen and at midlife is something that is fueling the popularity or the connection with manifestation.
I don't know. And the reason I don't know is because if I go back to when I was in my 20s, I was manifesting just as much back then as I am today. I think what I read an interesting fact the other day that women that are going through menopause, I mean, we've really gone off on a tangent today, but anyway, women that are going through menopause, the hormones that are leaving our body were the hormones that kept families together. They kept everybody liking, they kept everybody loving, they kept the family together, and they were really important for the nurturing and the keeping together of family. As you start to lose those hormones, you're losing that whole, like, you're on my last nerve now, and I don't have any reason to stay with it.
Yeah.
We're losing those feel good hormones, which means maybe we are smacked with a little bit of reality. And that reality makes us go, I don't like this reality. I want something different for myself. So maybe.
I mean, it's an interesting perspective, I think, to start to look at. And again, you sort of go back to the science of some of this. I mean, I never had a kid. You've had two. They always say you sort of forget the pain once you see the baby. I don't know if that's true, but it could be that once and it's all hormonal shifts, once those hormonal shifts start to happen, there's a new realization of what you want out of life. And I mean, to be fair, hormonal shifts happen to both men and women.
Absolutely. And I think there is a lot of that. Like, think of the women that have just soared in midlife because they don't have children. And, it's an extra workload. You don't have that extra workload, or you just don't care anymore, or you've lost that need to people please. Whatever those things are that kept you in another reality, they're kind
Hmm.
of all opening up in midlife, which is why I think midlife is so exciting for the rest of what's to come. And this is why you have an opportunity to write down with a pen and a paper, so powerful. What do you want? What will you no longer tolerate? What standards are too low? Start to make note of them. That's the first step.
Well, that takes us to the next experiment I think we're going to give a shot to. So, what do you
Okay.
have this week, Jen?
Well, kind of more of the same, but what I want to say to you is things you can feel, touch, smell, taste, they are the easiest things to manifest. Trust me when I say this. So if you want a thing, whatever it is, that thing is a lot easier to manifest than you think it is. Now, the caveat being, it can't be a thing that you think is so out of reach and you're so attached to, because that will stop it right there. The attachment is a problem. Remember the three things: it's ask, believe, receive. And when you're believing, it really means you're letting go. And you're letting the other power, the universe, a God, soul, source, whatever you want to call it, take over. Okay. So
Okay.
I'm going to tell you a little story about what happened to me when I was in my 30s. It's a perfect example for this. I had decided in my 30s that I really wanted to have a leather biker jacket, we call them, right? But I didn't just want one from I didn't want a plastic one. I wanted what they call an investment piece for the rest of my life. And so I knew I wanted it. It was actually on my vision board at the time. This would be 20 years ago easily. And it's on my vision board. So I see it periodically, but I'm not like obsessed with it. Anyway, one day I walk out the front door of the office without my wallet, and I happen to pop into the store next to me, which has retail clothing, which I often do not do, but for some reason I went in that day. And for some reason I walked right to the back of the store. Again, I don't know why I went straight back there. I just did. And lo and behold, on the rack, the sale rack, I saw a leather jacket. And I thought to myself, holy smokes, there's only one. I wonder if it's my size. And usually it's not because, let's just say, I need a large top. And anyway, I walked to the back of the store. Not only was it a large, it was 80% off. This $1,000 jacket ended up costing me $200. So, again, you're say what you're going to say.
Well, it's amazing. That's wonderful.
No, that's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say, yeah, that's just a coincidence. Sure, it's a coincidence. But don't you think it's funny that I had an expensive leather jacket on my vision board and I end up going into a store where not only do they have my size, they only have one and it's 80% off?
Do you know what threw me for a loop was when I visited the US this year before Christmas. I had wanted a pair of white leather sneakers and, very specific pair from a very specific store. And, they weren't inexpensive. And I'd been to the store probably a week earlier and I kind of knew what they would cost. And then I went a week later with a friend of mine and we walked back to the sale and the sale area and they didn't have any of the women's. And then I looked over at the men's and there was this small pair, very small pair of the exact shoes that I wanted. And it was on the discount rack. And then that discount rack was an additional 50% off. And so, let's call it was $100 pair of shoes retail. It was on for $20 and I was thrilled. And then I tried them on. They fit like a glove. Men's shoes, women's shoes didn't really matter to me. They were perfect. Walked to the front to pay for it. And my friend who was with me said it was on the 50% off. So you get another 50% off. I'm like, that can't be right. So she said, ask. So I asked the cashier and she called into the back and she's like, yeah. So my $100 shoes ended up being $10. So
That's insane.
that's what reminded me of, while you were telling the story, it reminded me of that happening just a few months ago. So I'm kind of giggling, but I'm sitting here going, oh, I was just lucky, right?
Okay, it was just lucky, but I'll have more of that, please.
Yeah.
Please, yes, I'll have more of that. So I think like those are the stories that we need to milk until the day is done. Like milk it, milk it, milk it back to where we started today, that feeling. Focus on the feeling of how joyful and delighted you were. And you said, I giggled. Focus on the giggle.
So I think one of the things we should pick up in our next episode. So we'll try this new experiment to try to get something that feels a little bit out of reach. But I'm sort of thinking that as we think about this type of stuff, that perhaps that piece where, but do I deserve it?
Oh yeah, that's huge.
So
And before we
maybe
leave this, yeah, sorry. For sure, let's do that. That's a big piece. Before we leave that topic, though, of am I just lucky? Is it just coincidence? Listen, I could have gone that day I put it on my vision board and bought the thing at full price. I could have gone and bought it, but I didn't. I put it on my board and I just thought it's something I'd like in the future. Let's just see what happens. It came to me, right? It came to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, enough on that. So, next week, focus on something you'd really like. Put it on your vision board. I'm a big believer in vision boards. We can talk about that in an entirely different episode. Put it on your vision board, get an image for it, get it in your head, and forget about it and see what happens.
Okay. And I love the idea. I think you're really good at doing vision boards. I have not done one. So if you can talk us through one, I think that would be amazing.
Let's do it.
Okay. So thank you everybody for listening. If you want to give us any feedback at all, you can get us at info@truthanddare.ca. We'd love to hear from you. And if you like this podcast, please give us a follow and a thumbs up and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks, everyone.